Hello everyone, I'm Atira Minuddin and you're tuning in Palestinian Diaries podcast again, yet another episode. And today we are again joined with Puan Sri Norma Hashim, the author of the Prisoner's Diaries, where we already discussed about the stories in the book from our previous episodes. And also we have another guest today. He is from Gaza. He moved to Malaysia in 2019. He is fellow researcher and coordinator of Palestinian Studies Circle at Asia Middle East Center for Research and Dialogue, AMEC. We have today Mu'adh. Thank you so much for coming into our podcast episode today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having us today. I'm doing great, and I hope this podcast goes as all the success wished for.
Thank you so much. And before we recorded this episode, I was chatting with Mu'adh, and he still has families in Gaza, and you only been here for a few years, right? So I hope you can share your experience, how it is there right now, the updates on your family, and maybe some of the previous, maybe terrible, I'm pretty sure it wasn't great, the situation there. Maybe you could share with us later on in the podcast. But before that, we just want to talk about yes, we know that Palestine is always under attack, but what are the reasons behind it? So, Puan Sri, perhaps you could share with us an overview of the Israeli attacks on Palestinians, and what are the key motivations behind the military actions?
Yeah, Assalamualaikum. Well, if you were a child in Gaza who's 16 years old, you would have lived through 5 major military assaults and bombings on Gaza. So you can imagine the trauma that children go through. And he's 16, he or she is 16, and they've not been able to leave the place because Gaza is under siege. And yet they've been bombarded 5 times with bombs and all sorts of missiles, and fearing for their lives. So this is how it is in Gaza. And the reasons, what was the question again?
The reasons behind the attacks.
Yeah. Well, there are many reasons. Well, because Israel feels that it doesn't have to be accountable for anything, because it's always been protected by America, especially the US and the West. The attacks have happened. The 5 attacks was in 2008, and then it was also in 2012, 2014, and 2021. And also for a period of 2 years, there was this something called the Great Return March, where the Palestinians, after having been under siege for over 10 years that time, they decided to have a protest every Friday, was it every Friday?
Yes.
At the border between Gaza and the rest of Palestine. And in that 2 years, over 200 Palestinians were actually killed by snipers. So, yeah, a child who's 16 has gone through 6 kinds of, heavily violent and brutal incidences like this. The reasons, well, if you remember my book, the first book was The Prisoner's Diaries, which recorded interviews with prisoners who had been released. Yes. And it was as part of an exchange with one Israeli soldier called Gilad Shalit. So the attacks on Gaza in 2008 were partly because the Israelis were looking for him, and they decided to enter Gaza and to search for him, which was unsuccessful. They did not find him. And this led to, of course, the promise of the free agreement eventually in 2011, which saw the release of 1,300 Palestinians from prison in exchange for that one soldier. And another reason for the attacks on Gaza in 2008, which actually led to the deaths of 1,400 Palestinians, among them many children, is that in 2007, was it 2007? Hamas won the elections. 2006?
Yeah, 2006.
Yeah. There were actually free elections in Gaza, democratic elections, and Hamas won it. And of course, the West and Israel were not happy at all with this government. And so they decided also that the attacks was also as a result of their unhappiness. They wanted to see whether they could lead to a change, I think, in the government. But of course, Hamas is still there today. So, but unfortunately, these things cost lives, thousands of lives.
Innocent lives,
yes.
children, women.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in 2012, The reason, what was the reason for 2012? No.
In 2012, Israel started the war after the exchange deal of prisoners.
Yeah.
Then they, since then, they considered the mastermind of that change or exchange deal with Israel, whose name is Ahmed al-Jabari. He's the senior leader. He's considered as the major general of resistance in Gaza. They considered him as the first wanted person for Israel. So once the opportunity was available for Israel, they assassinated him in the daylight. And after that, the resistance decided to counterattack on Israel, responding to this assassination. And since then, things got escalated to be an open war between Gaza and Israel.
Do you remember any of the part of the experience while you were there?
Yes, especially in this war, I and some of my friends, we were planning to have a barbecue party at the same very date. And we were planning for it for weeks, since in the middle of the day, we heard at the news that it was carried out, this assassination was carried out against Ahmed al-Jabari. And when we heard the news, we knew, like, things will get worse.
Yes.
What should we do? Are we going to carry out our week's planned party or not? So we decided to have it not on a rooftop, but in the first ground floor, and we have it as a secret barbecue party. That's what gives you an idea or a glimpse of what is the Palestinian people.
Basically, you guys live in fear.
Yeah, we live in fear, but we still are clinging to the life.
Yeah.
We want to live our life peacefully and normally. Things got heated after 1 day or 2 days. Israelis started bombing whole houses and leveled them to the ground. But alhamdulillah, after many or few days, Israel and the resistance managed to conclude a deal arrangement for ceasefire mediated by Egypt, and by that ceasefire agreement, the war stopped.
And Muad, could you provide us the insights into the political and security considerations that influence Israel's decision-making process when it comes to attacking Palestinians? Because clearly, you guys are not even involved in the whole process, but you guys live in fear. You guys hear the news, and then you guys have to make changes in your life.
That's correct. Actually, if you have viewed all the wars that have been carried against Gaza, Palestinians has no choice but to live the war.
Yes.
We have never been consulted in that war. The war has been imposed on us and started against us with no interference between from our side. So if you also viewed the major wars that we are talking about that have been carried against Gaza, each war has a reason or motivation for its start. And this motivation has to do with the political, internal politics inside Israel. We can have, for example, the latest war, for example, or the 2014 war, for example. You will look to the Israelis, for example, the 2023 escalation that recently ended. Israel was going through its worst time.
Yeah, it was a crisis. Thousands of Israelis were on the streets because they were complaining about judicial freedom. Now the court's freedom was restricted. There was an economic crisis as well. people were very unhappy and taking to the streets. Not that they cared about Palestine. It wasn't about Palestinian human rights.
Yes.
It was about their own rights they feel and their quality of life that was going to be affected.
As if they weren't already affected, now it's going to be,
yes, but
it would be
when
escalated.
when Netanyahu decides to bomb Gaza, it's kind of to distract people as well, to take the issue away, for the press also to focus on something else and to look at something else instead of what was happening in his own country.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
But they
how
have
do
to pay the
you-
price for that, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you evaluate the position of the international community then and the principles of war and crimes against humanity?
Yeah, obviously, they are accountable for the war crimes because, they've what was it? The Great Return March also. I think people have brought it to the International Criminal Court because they were shooting civilians. 200. How many people? 200 over people
200
killed,
plus,
including journalists as well. Medics were actually shot dead by snipers. It was actually just like a free-for-all. The snipers were just doing target practice, on children, on women, on doctors, on journalists as well. So it has been brought to the ICC. But unfortunately, things are moving very slowly. And Israel is protected by the US. They're not made accountable for anything they do, despite the terrible cost to the Palestinians.
And speaking of journalists, we spoke about earlier because today is May 25th, and on May 11th, 2023, it's the first anniversary of the death of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, where she is a Palestinian journalist, and she was shot dead last year on May 11, 2022, and her news was shared all around the world about the horrid, terrible tragedy that happened with her and her husband. From what I've read, she was there. The husband was there as well, right?
He
The
was
husband,
with her.
yeah. So clearly, not only she was just doing her job. Clearly, like innocent people are dying, and also her, and she was just doing her job reporting. But perhaps you could share what are the circumstances surrounding the assassination of Shireen Abu Akleh, like what
An
factors?
attack on journalists is an attack on press freedom.
Yeah,
An
clearly.
attack on international human rights. People say in war the first casualty is truth.
Yes.
So Shireen was on the ground reporting as it is on Al Jazeera, and what people see, they know this is what is the truth.
Yeah.
So you remove someone like her, maybe less news comes out about what Israel, what the military are doing in raiding homes, in shooting people on the streets, in arresting children.
Yeah.
So these reporters provide people a viewpoint from the ground, and they're very important. In fact, Israel has already killed 20 journalists in the last 22 years. So it's not just Shireen, but in the past, there's many, many more killed when they try to film things, when they happen to be there during an incident. And so they're caught, and they call it like collateral damage. But I feel that these are targeted because they try to get people off and to make them afraid to go down and report on things so that nobody knows what's happening, So basically the journalists are the eyes and ears on the ground that we all need because we can't be there.
Yeah.
The other journalists also during the Great Return March, Yasser Murtaja was a cameraman.
Yeah, he was a cameraman, and he
You knew him?
Yeah, I knew him.
Okay.
He was a cameraman covering and reporting what's happening in the Great Return March of Return, in the borders of Gaza, and he was clearly can be seen as a press
They wear their vests,
journalist.
right?
Yeah.
It's press.
And he was sniped, and he was shot dead from far away from being engaged in any violence or something like that. He was just holding his camera, and even though Israel decided to silence him in a way or another by killing him. So that incident was one of the remarkable incidents for the violation of that Israel is doing for the last 75 years against the Palestinians, especially those who have the ability to deliver and their message, the Palestinian message, to the rest of the world.
There was Israeli Brigadier General who actually said something like, cameras are weapons. So they consider that, you know.
Yeah, we confuse
yes.
cameras of RPGs. Come
No,
on.
It doesn't make sense.
Like,
No,
it
no, I
doesn't
think
make
they look
sense.
at it as like cameras are, because they consider them as against their
Yes.
war, you know,
Yeah.
because you are documenting things with a
Yes.
camera, which is the truth.
yes.
So they look at it as a camera
And they
is a
are
weapon as
afraid
well.
of the truth.
Yes,
Yes.
of
Out
course.
there.
And even the pen is, you know, a pen is like can
Yes.
be weaponized to write things. They
Yes.
feel that, so they're just afraid of the truth coming out.
And the fact that you mentioned 20 journalists have
Yes.
been assassinated, basically. So how has the freedom for journalists and the media there have been since assassination, especially Shireen Abu Akleh, because her story blew up around the world. So how has been the response there for the media?
I think for the media side, the Western media or the mainstream media has nothing, has done nothing much about Shireen. It's been now, as you said, it's been 1 year, almost more than 1 year, and we haven't seen any tangible process regarding any investigation or anyone who has been presented to the court or
So no
held
justice has been.
No.
has been not served.
It's
yet.
been actually, it's I think Al Jazeera has presented it to the International Criminal Court, but nothing has been done, or they haven't said anything yet. The irony of it is Shireen Abu Akleh is also an American,
Yes.
and the woman as well, of
Yeah.
course, of
And
the 20
Christian.
journalists. I mean, she's
And she's a
Christian,
Christian.
a Christian Palestinian,
Oh,
so
she's
American.
Not Muslim.
No, she's not.
No, with American
Okay.
passport, you'd think that the Americans would do something.
But they don't
But
care.
you see now that if you violate things against, you know, Israel cannot be held accountable. Basically, there's like something they put, there's like a blanket approval for everything they do from the U.S. You know, they just don't hold them accountable. Yeah.
And Israel wasn't like afraid or bothered about anything, to the extent that they also attacked the funeral of Shireen Abu Akleh. We witnessed that, and we've seen that on news, where they attacking the coffin, the people who are holding
Yeah, the
and
procession.
carrying her in the funeral. So to that extent, Israel doesn't care or doesn't bother about what is regulations or whatever.
Actually, that photo won a World Press Prize, you know. The photo of Israeli soldiers attacking the pallbearers of the coffin. That won a prize. So basically, people around the world do feel something. They feel upset as well. But when it comes to politicians and governments, they're not doing their job.
Yes.
Yeah. Or they're feeling like they are pressured as well by the Zionist lobby in the US.
But clearly, much like the people around the world gave some reaction, but you didn't get any justice, right? But does that affect the relationship between Israel and Muslim and Arab countries?
Well,
Have you seen any changes, perhaps?
This is a whole different topic. Like we've witnessed a wave of, unfortunately, a wave of normalization recently between some Arab countries and Israel, and this, for my personal overview, I don't know what is the motive behind such deals or relations, but this, what I know, that this declined, or in a way spread the spirit of despair against or among the Palestinians, because they've always looked to the Arab countries as their back in this conflict. And for their case, in a conflict against Israel, it's not only Palestinian who's fighting or resisting against the Israeli occupation. This occupation is not occupying Palestine, that's the land of Palestinians.
actually, I wanted to say also about the International Criminal Court, when they were supposed to follow up on the cases brought forward by human rights group about the assassination of Shireen and on the killings during the Great Return March. But instead now they decided to focus on Putin and charge him with war crimes for the invasion of Ukraine. I mean, this shows you the influence of the West on the ICC to select their cases. So they don't follow up on what's happening in Palestine and ignore it, and then they make a big fuss about Russia and Ukraine. and turn the issue around. I want to also to mention the other journalists, the famous ones that also have been assassinated by Israel through Mossad. Ghassan Kanafani, who everybody knows, is a famous writer for Palestinian stories. In 1972, he and his niece were killed in a car bomb in Lebanon. So he was a journalist who was very prolific and famous and loved by the Palestinians, and he was also killed by Israel.
And the fact that you don't have to be in Palestine.
Yes, they do find you. Yes, yes. And the other journalist was a cartoonist, Naji Al-Ali, is also very well known. He was also killed. He is the creator of that cartoon of the boy in the refugee camp, you know, Handala. And then he was also killed, and he was killed in London. And so basically, Israel has got away with killing journalists over decades. It's not just killing killing journalists. They have also arrested many journalists. Currently, many journalists are in prison at the moment as well. Another one I know that was covered by my book was Muhammad Al-Kik, who had gone on a long hunger strike, and when he's released after the hunger strike, he got arrested again. I think he's currently still in prison.
How old is he?
He's about 40 years old. Yeah,
almost 40.
But he's been arrested many times, not charged. So he's arrested under administrative detention, and he's held for months and almost years without knowing when he's going to be charged, when he's going to come out, which is very unfair. You know, if you put a person in court, at least they know that, they have a timeline of how long they'll be there. But then it's very open-ended. You hold a person like that in detention, and that's why he's been on many hunger strikes in order to be released.
The most recent one I was following, he was his name is Ramzi. He's a Palestinian living in Jerusalem, and he was just covering the daily life of Palestinians and showing the using his platforms on social media to show the world the insults that have been continuously carried out by Israeli soldiers against the worshippers in Masjid al-Aqsa. Israel decided to arrest him without accusing him with any charge, and that's called, and it's well known in Palestine, that Israel can arrest you without giving you any charge up to 6 months, and it's renewable every time. So he was being held in a prison for 6 months now, and even he had to witness his mother passed away while he's in the prison, and Israel denied him even saying goodbye to her and looking at her at his last time. That's one of the saddest stories that I am sure that there have been hundreds or thousands of similar stories happening daily in Palestine.
Clearly, I wanted to ask if there were any efforts by the international community to hold Israel accountable, but given that it has been happening since the 70s, clearly it has not been, there has no justice at all been happening.
Yes, I guess, well, the US views Israel as very essential, like a 52nd state of America. In fact, Joe Biden, has said that if Israel had not been existing, the US would have created one, isn't it?
Biden,
he said that. Can you imagine how ridiculous it is? Yes, to create something they call a democracy, but is in fact a regime of apartheid and colonialism. You know, it's nothing to be proud of. In fact, it's very shameful for the US to be linked to something like that, and for also $4 billion US dollars of taxpayers' money to be used to fund this occupation and to fund the arrests of children and the torture and the beatings and the assassinations.
But I've seen response from the Americans themselves that they know their tax money is being contributed to killing the innocent people in Palestine, which I think is probably a step forward to them condemning their own president, their own government of supporting Israel. Right?
Yeah, the rise of social media has been very useful. Yes, and with the younger generation where they're learning from social media, which is not controlled through mainstream press, which of course is very controlled over there. In fact, we know Gazan journalists who, when they report on the ground about things happening in Gaza, when they send it into AP or Reuters or the BBC, things are altered to make things seem not as bad, you know. So these are heavily edited. That's why Shireen working with Al Jazeera was very important. Because it was not filtered, it was as it is. And as Muath told me the other day, she's an icon for the Palestinians. Someone they saw every day on TV, right?
We've been raised listening to her or watching her on TV, reporting what's happening in Palestine. We see Palestine and what's happening in Palestine through her voice. And actually, I attended an event here in KL, Al Jazeera, for the first anniversary, where they commemorate her anniversary, and we were shown a report about the story of Shireen. So that was shocking for me, that she was getting like almost daily threats from the Israelis and threats for her life, that your voice is being annoying for us and we will assassinate you one day. And unfortunately this happened live on camera. She was reporting live, and since like it's been 1 year now and we cannot see justice served yet. We are calling for the like the freedom word, the free word that has been calling for the freedom of journalism, and to look here also to have a look on in Palestine, what is happening, what Israeli has been committed to against the Palestinians for the past 75 years now. And
lastly, but I just wanted to know, has there, since the aftermath of Shireen's assassination, has there been any impact on the media landscape and the public discourse regarding the situation in Palestine?
Yes, for sure. Like we've witnessed like many initiatives nowadays taking place all over the world to change, because the mainstream media is not helping. It's not truthfully covering what's happening or really happening in Palestine. It's not people are not dying there. They are being killed. You have to say that. And they are being killed by whom? Like a Palestinian was killed. This is not like a news. You have to report this. This truth is lacking for the doer of that action. Who killed that Palestinian? Who's responsible? Yeah, you have to say it out clear that Israel killed one Palestinian or three or thousands of Palestinians. So Palestinians now are taking the initiative to change the whole narrative of the conflict, that Palestinians have been seen as terrorists for just throwing stones. But we can witness other nations nowadays, they are being called heroes for bombing themselves in the occupation troops. So the double standards cannot stand for this century we are living in. We cannot take it anymore to be giving a left eye that you see us in black and white, and while you see others in all shades of colors. So I think the knowledge and the awareness still needs a lot to be done, but we are on the correct track, and we're witnessing some changes in the discourse. People are saying it clearly nowadays. People are marching in Europe by thousands against apartheid in Israel. So this is a good sign that people started to see Palestinians and what is happening in Palestine without the black glasses that they have been wearing for the last couple of years.
Is there anything you want to chime in?
No, we are all hopeful that worldwide citizens will actually can come up one day. In fact, they are actually.
I feel like we're moving into the right direction, slowly but surely.
I attended the Nakba March in London last week to march 75 years of the Nakba, 75 years since Israel expelled thousands of Palestinians from their homes out of Palestine. And it was very good to see all sorts of groups come together. It was organized by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in the UK, and many branches came. I met people from Wales, from Scotland, and then you have all sorts of young and old, of all races and colors. So it was very good to see.
Because they should not care about races. It's just about innocent lives being killed left and right every day. And I really hope that this was a really eye-opening, fruitful conversation that we have today. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Puan Sri and Muad, for coming to this episode of podcast. I hope those stories inspire you guys to tweet about Palestinians' innocent lives being killed by Israeli. We hope there will be more steps into taking care of their safety there in Palestine. Thank you so much for tuning in to Palestinian Diaries podcast. We hope to see you again on the next episode. I'm Atira Minuddin. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.